Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the English Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and as always, I'm here to guide you on your journey to mastering English.
And I'm Julia, your co-host. We're so glad you could join us today. If you're someone who wants to improve your English speaking skills, you're in for a treat, because today's topic is all about how reading can help you speak better English.
Yes, reading. You might think reading and speaking are two completely different skills, but they're actually closely connected. In fact, many language learners have discovered that the more they read, the better and more confidently they can express themselves in English.
That's right, Jason. Reading helps with vocabulary, pronunciation, and even sentence structure. And in today's episode, we're going to dive into why reading is so effective and share some tips on how you can use it to improve your English speaking skills.
So stick with us until the end, because we'll also give you some practical tips that you can start using today. And don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with friends who might find it helpful.
Let's get started.
All right, Julia, let's kick things off. When we talk about improving English speaking skills, most people immediately think of practicing conversations. But reading? That's not the first thing that comes to mind, is it?
Not at all, Jason. People often think of reading as something quiet and unrelated to speaking, but the truth is, it's like fuel for your language engine. I remember when I was learning Spanish, I started reading short stories, and it made a world of difference in how I spoke.
That's such a great example. For me, I used to read news articles when I was brushing up on my French. And even though I wasn't speaking right away, I noticed that I was picking up natural phrases and how sentences were structured. That made me feel more confident when I did start speaking.
Exactly. It's like you're absorbing the language passively through reading. And let's not forget, reading introduces us to so many new words and phrases that we don't come across in everyday conversations. For English learners, this can be a game changer.
Absolutely, and what's really cool is that reading also helps you understand how native speakers communicate. You see how they use idioms, expressions, and even different tones depending on the context. It's like having a sneak peek into real-life conversations.
That's such a good point, Jason. And one thing I always tell learners is that reading isn't just about understanding, it's about inspiration. When you read a powerful quote or an interesting sentence, you feel motivated to try saying it yourself, don't you?
Totally. Think about how many of us have tried to repeat lines from a book or even a favorite movie script. It's fun and effective. So for all our listeners out there, don't underestimate the power of reading. It's not just about improving comprehension. It's a stepping stone to speaking better English.
And we're about to explain exactly how that works, so stay tuned.
All right, Julia, let's get into the heart of the discussion. Why is reading such a powerful tool for improving English speaking skills? Let's break it down.
Sure, Jason. Let's start with vocabulary building, which is probably the most obvious benefit of reading. When you read, you're exposed to so many new words and phrases in context. For example, if you're reading a story, you'll see how words are used in real sentences, making it easier to understand and remember them.
Exactly. And unlike memorizing a list of words, reading helps you learn how those words are actually used. For instance, instead of just learning the word remarkable, you might read a sentence like, "It was a remarkable achievement," which helps you understand how to use it naturally in your own conversations.
Right. And that brings us to the next point. Grammar awareness. When you're reading, you're constantly seeing correct sentence structures, which helps you absorb grammar rules without even realizing it. It's like learning by example.
Absolutely. For example, when you read a sentence like, "She has been studying for hours," you see how tenses are used correctly. And over time, you start to use those tenses naturally in your own speaking.
Another big benefit is pronunciation practice, especially if you're reading dialogue-heavy books or pairing your reading with audiobooks. Listening to how words are pronounced while reading along can really improve your speaking skills.
That's a great tip. I've seen learners improve a lot just by shadowing audiobooks. They read along with the narrator and repeat after them. It's like having a speaking coach right there with you.
And let's not forget about confidence building. When you read, especially aloud, you're practicing forming sentences and getting comfortable with the language. This helps you gain the confidence to speak in real-life situations.
Yes, and the more you read, the more familiar you become with common phrases and expressions. This familiarity can make speaking feel less intimidating because you already know how to say things the right way.
Exactly. And reading also exposes you to different styles of communication: formal, informal, persuasive, and even humorous. This variety is invaluable when you're trying to sound natural in different settings.
That's a great point, Julia. So to sum up, reading helps you expand your vocabulary, understand grammar, improve pronunciation, and build confidence, all of which are essential for speaking English fluently.
Absolutely, Jason. And the best part? Reading is something you can do at your own pace, whenever you have free time. It's such a flexible way to improve your language skills.
Exactly. And coming up next, we'll share some practical tips on how to make the most of reading to boost your English speaking. Stay tuned. Now that we've discussed the benefits of reading, let's talk about how to actually use reading to improve your English speaking skills. Julia, what's your first tip for our listeners?
My first tip is to choose the right materials. Start with something that matches your current level of English. For beginners, books like graded readers, children's stories, or short articles are perfect. As you improve, you can move on to novels, blogs, or even newspapers.
That's such a good point. If you pick something too difficult, it can feel frustrating. But if it's too easy, you won't learn much. I also recommend looking for materials that match your interests, whether it's sports, travel, or fantasy novels. If you enjoy what you're reading, you're more likely to stick with it.
Exactly. And here's another tip. Read aloud. This is such a simple but powerful way to practice your speaking. When you read out loud, you're practicing how to pronounce words, form sentences, and improve your fluency. Plus, it boosts your confidence.
That's a great one. Reading aloud also helps you hear yourself, so you can notice areas where you might need to improve. And if you pair this with audiobooks, you can take it a step further. Listen to how the narrator pronounces words and try to copy them. This technique is called shadowing.
Yes, shadowing is fantastic. It's like having a private tutor. You listen, repeat, and get used to the rhythm and tone of native speakers. Another practical tip is to write down new words or phrases you come across while reading. Then, practice using those words in your own sentences or conversations.
That's a great idea. Keeping a vocabulary journal is really helpful. And when you learn a new phrase, don't just memorize it. Try using it in different contexts. For example, if you read the phrase break the ice, practice using it in sentences like, I broke the ice by telling a joke at the party.
Exactly, Jason. And here's one more tip. Repeat what you read in your own words. This is called summarizing. After you read a paragraph or a short story, try explaining it out loud, as if you're telling someone about it. This helps you practice speaking and organizing your thoughts in English.
That's such an effective technique. And for those who enjoy storytelling, try adding a bit of creativity to your summaries. Maybe change the ending of the story or add your own twist. It's a fun way to engage with the material while practicing your speaking.
I love that idea. And one final tip is to be consistent. Even 10 to 15 minutes of reading a day can make a huge difference over time. So make it a daily habit and you'll see steady progress in your speaking skills.
Absolutely. Consistency is key. So to recap, choose the right materials, read aloud, shadow with audiobooks, write down and practice new phrases, summarize in your own words, and stay consistent. If you follow these tips, you'll be amazed at how much your English speaking improves.
That's right. And don't forget, learning a language is a journey. Celebrate your progress along the way and enjoy the process.
Coming up next, we'll answer a common question from our listeners about reading and learning English. Stay tuned. Now, let's move on to one of our favorite parts of the podcast, the Q&A segment. We love answering your questions, and today we have an interesting one from a listener named Ahmed. Ahmed asks, how can I stay motivated to read in English every day, especially when it feels difficult? Great question, Ahmed.
That's such a relatable question, Ahmed. Many learners feel this way at some point. My advice is to start small and focus on materials you enjoy. For example, if you love sports, try reading short articles about your favorite teams. When the content is interesting to you, it doesn't feel like a chore.
Great advice, Julia. I'd also add that setting small goals can make a big difference. Instead of saying, I need to read an entire book, start with one page or even one paragraph a day. Celebrate those small wins. It's all about building a habit.
Absolutely. And don't forget to use tools that can help you stay on track. For example, apps like Kindle or websites with English blogs often let you highlight words and see their meanings instantly. This makes reading less overwhelming.
Another tip is to combine reading with other activities. For instance, read a recipe and then try making the dish, or read song lyrics while listening to the music. Making it fun and practical can really boost your motivation.
Yes, and don't be afraid to reread something if it feels tough the first time. The second or third time, you'll notice how much easier it becomes, and that can be a real confidence boost.
Great points, Julia. Ahmed, I hope these tips help you stay motivated. And for all our listeners, if you have a question about learning English, feel free to send it to us. We'd love to feature it in a future episode.
That's right. Just leave your questions in the comments or send us a message. We're here to help you on your English learning journey.
Coming up next, we'll wrap up today's episode with some final thoughts. Stay with us. All right, that brings us to the end of today's episode. We hope you found our discussion on how reading can help you speak better English both helpful and inspiring.
Yes, remember, reading is not just about improving your language skills. It's also a way to explore new worlds, gain knowledge, and connect with others. And when you combine reading with speaking practice, you'll see amazing progress.
Exactly. So whether you're reading a short article, a fun novel, or even subtitles while watching a movie, every little bit helps. Start small, stay consistent, and enjoy the journey.
And don't forget to use the practical tips we shared today. Read aloud, shadow with audiobooks, and summarize what you've read. These small steps can make a big difference in your speaking skills over time.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the English Learning Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us reach more learners like you.
And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts or questions in the comments and let us know how reading has helped your English learning journey. We'll see you in the next episode.
Until then, keep practicing, keep learning, and remember, you're doing great. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.